Good morning, everybody. I hope everybody is doing very well. Can you just quickly tell me whether you are able to get the audio and video properly? So if you can hear me and you can see the screen, which is Principles and Practices of Banking, session 1, then okay, perfect. So today I welcome you all in the first class of Principles and Practices of Banking. We start this day and let's all of us be very, very determined with the fact that yes, in this 1 month, when we start with our live classes, we are going to cover all the topics and we are going to make sure that when we appear for our principles and practices of banking, we are very, very comfortable with all the concepts. So I'm sure you've seen the videos that we have on YouTube. Just to set the tone right, right? So this is the paper pattern. Now there are 120 questions for 100 marks for anybody who's going to appear for the first time. And I'm sure some of you have already appeared and you have that experience of past papers. In that case, you can always add to what you see on the screen, right? Supplement from your own experience. So far what we've seen is that there are 120 questions and there is a division which is like there are 70 questions for half mark, 35 questions for 1 mark, and 15 questions for 2 marks. And all of this makes the total of 120 questions, 100 marks. Now, obviously, we all can understand that the difficulty level of these questions is different, right? And a half mark question will obviously easier. But what we've seen in the past is that the true and false type questions have not been asked. Factual questions are now very less. What you need to know when you are answering the question is concept, right? So we are going to focus on these in these classes on the concepts per se, and then you have access to your ebooks, you have access to your mock tests. That will be the place where you will get a lot of practice with the questions. And in case there is any problem, uh, I mean, we at Adda 24/7 are always there with you, so should not be an issue at all. Now, this entire 120 question spans from 5 modules in principles and practices of banking. And this is how, if you see the study plan also, we've divided the sessions based on this. So the first module is the Indian financial system. The second is function of banks. The third is banking technology. The fourth one will be the marketing of banking services, right? And the fifth one is ethics in banks and financial institutions. The fifth module has been added of late. It used to be not there earlier. And the syllabus or the topics that are covered in each of the modules have seen an expansion, especially in module A and B. So I'm sure you've got your registration done for your JIB and you have access to those Macmillan books, which earlier used to be somewhere around 400 pages, right? And now it's almost 800 pages that you have. I can see that yes, Pooji and Mohan Bhaiji, they've raised their hand. I am sure you're just getting accustomed to the platform. In case there is something, please mention in the chat box. And without wasting any time, we are going to start with Module A, Indian Financial System. Now, one more thing just to note that Module A and Module B, they make the maximum chunk of your syllabus. You get more questions from these modules, and you get a 2 mark question also from these modules, right? So they are going to be very, very important. Do not panic if you feel a little lost in terms of the connecting thread between the topics that we have to cover, because today's lecture is going to primarily give you an overview of what all we are going to cover in the module A. This is very much a part of your syllabus as well. And if you get this right, you will be able to understand all the following lectures. You do not necessarily have to understand everything. As I mentioned, it's an overview, and a detailed discussion of all the topics will be followed in the classes, right? So let's start the discussion here with Module A, Indian Financial System. Before we move forward, let's see what is a financial system. So whenever we talk about financial system, we are talking about institutional framework, and this is a connected framework which is interconnected. So if you talk about interconnections, they are interconnected through these four main parts. The three main parts which establishes the interconnection is financial assets. The examples are given in the bracket, which is loans, deposits, bonds, shares. Then there are financial institutions, which is examples, banks, mutual funds, insurance companies. And the last one as the interconnection is financial markets. And all of this is regulated, and then, smooth functioning is ensured by the regulators. So we have different regulators for different types of instruments and the markets that are there. Now let's quickly see how do we understand the interconnected financial system. So if I just have to show you this, this is going to explain you or enable you to understand what I was talking about. So here you will have, let's say, so what did we talk about? Financial assets, intermediaries and markets. So you have both financial intermediaries and markets here. If you follow the laser pointer, this is financial markets and this is financial intermediaries. And what are they connecting? They are connecting the savers and the investors. Now, who are the savers? Savers are the people who are saving money. That means whatever they are having as income and whatever they are having as expenditure, they are able to save, right? So the expenditure is less than the income. Now they can save on a monthly basis, they can save sporadically, like once in 6 months. That doesn't stop them from being savers. And the other side is investors. Investors are like those deficit units who are always in need of more money, right? So in that case, they need more money for various activities. Typically, investors are the business houses or the business firms which borrow money. So let's say they want to set up a new plant or they want to get a new building, they want to try acquire somebody. All of this is a part of requirement of funds which make sure that the business is borrowing. And now how do they borrow? So one example was business houses, business firms. The other is government. So the government also borrows money because they have to do a lot of expenditure. It can be on development side, welfare side, administrative side, all of that. So usually you will find people in terms of business houses, firms, government as investors, as the deficit units, as the people who borrow money for meeting their requirements. And when we talk about savers, they are normally the surplus unit. That means they will have a surplus of money even after meeting the expenditures. So I hope the difference is clear between what is the savers and investors. Now, one very important thing, that can an individual be an investor, or can an individual be a deficit unit? So we've done business is, government is. What about individuals? Quickly answer in the chat box. Do you think they need money? So will they be in the deficit unit where the link is between savers and investors? Yes, so absolutely right, Sarita ji and Anisat ji. When we talk about investors, we are not talking only about the firms or the businesses or the government. We are also talking about individuals or any person who's in need of a loan. So when we go to the bank and when somebody approaches you and you give a education loan or a consumer loan, they are also an example where individuals are acting as investors. There can be different set of individuals or maybe same set of individuals which are acting as savers. But what will be the difference? The difference is that probably they are saving small amount of money, but now when they are taking a loan, the amount is really huge. So moving forward, now when they have to take a loan, normally people go to the bank, right? So bank is an example of a financial intermediary who is going to have the saver's money via your fixed deposits, via savings bank account, or and stuff like that. So as a bank, you collect savers money and then you give a loan. So this is exactly what financial intermediaries do. They connect the savers and the investors, and they help in the transformation of the savings or the surplus units in terms of the time, in terms of the amount, and in terms of the place. When I say these three things, I'm essentially trying to say that the banks are able to solve the problem of different time requirements. I want a loan for 5 years, but I can save money only for 5 months. But if I go to the bank can ensure both the things. Then after that, I said time transformation. That means I have a saving or I have a break of, let's say, 10 days. And I want a loan for, let's say, 2 months. But there's somebody who's saving the exact amount but wants the money back in 1 month. Now, if I'm looking for something, a loan for 2 months, and I want to save for 1 month, is that possible without a financial intermediary? No, because one, that you might be able to give the amount, but how will I repay back after 1 month? Because the duration for which the saving is done and the duration for which the loan is made is different. So, this is about financial intermediary. Similarly, when you have other financial intermediaries, which is like insurance company or the mutual fund houses, there also the essence or the basic activity is that you collect different amounts from different people spanning on different maturities, collect all that money, which is pooling of the funds, and then invest that money. So you can invest in equity market, money market, capital market, debt market, wherever you want to invest. So that ways there is a connection between savers and investors. I hope this is clear so far. Any questions, anybody? I'll take a 30-second break here. Okay. So if we've understood what is financial intermediaries and how they help in the transfer of funds from savers to deficits, it is going to be very simple to understand about financial markets as well. When we talk about financial markets, uh, there is an example, let's say a share market, which is easiest to understand. So once we are telling, you know, which is, let's say I have surplus money, so I want to invest in the stock market. So we all know when we talk about stock market, there are two exchanges, NSE, BSE, right? So when we talk about this, so National Stock Exchange, Bombay Stock Exchange, I can do trading anywhere. And when I do trading, what is going to happen is when I buy a share, the money is going to go out. So whatever is my surplus money is going to go to somebody else who's in need of money, which is a deficit unit. So that is how when you buy shares or when you buy bonds, the money is going from savers to investors through the financial market. Now, financial market can have different types of instruments. Like in a stock market, normally the instrument is shares. It can be often derivatives. There can also be an example where you can see that you can do a trading between bonds. The bonds can be government bonds, private bonds, anything. So when you trade in any of them, they are all the example of financial markets intermediation. Now, why would savers go to the financial markets or financial institutions? Because they will be given some promise of return that if you open a fixed deposit with us, the bank is going to give you an interest. If you invest in a mutual fund, you are expecting an increase in the NAV. If you are trading on the stock market, you are expecting the market to again go up and you can sell the same share at a higher price or you might get dividend. Now, one last arrow which I want to explain in this particular slide is that financial markets and financial intermediaries are also linked. Why? Because financial markets also invest or trade using the financial markets, right? So they need when you talk about, let's say, a bank or a mutual fund or an insurance company, what do they do with the money that they've collected from different individuals? So typically, they invest that money based on what their norms are. And when you invest that money, you are again establishing a connection between financial markets and intermediaries. So going forward, on this particular slide, I've just written what are the basic functions that a financial system performs, what we've already discussed in the previous slide, that financial system transfer resources across time, sectors, and regions. So, like I was telling you an example, you want to save money for 1 month, but you want a loan for 2 months. That is across time, across sectors. So, I might be very, you know, I'm working in the education sector, but there is a money that is required in the, um, you know, financial sector or some other startup or in the cement industry. So there is a transfer of resources across sectors as well and regions. So especially like in the financial markets, if I'm doing a stock trading, when I sell my share nationwide, anybody can buy and vice versa. So you do not know who's the other person, and it can be anybody across the different regions that India has. Then the second point or the second function, if you look at the financial system, manages risk for the economy. How do you manage risk? Because there is an, as I mentioned, insurance is also a type of a financial intermediary. So in this, insurance basic purpose is to manage risk. Not only just like an example of fire insurance, but just the presence of the exchange and the counterparty. The damages or the exposure to risk has significantly reduced, though be it financial markets or financial institutions. Then the third point says the financial system pools and subdivides funds depending on the needs for the individual saver or investor. So it, like I was mentioning, you will collect the fund and you will distribute that fund based on the needs of different individuals. And the last one is that it performs an important clearing house function. Now, what is a clearing house? You will discuss this in greater detail when we do financial markets. As of now, in a crude manner, if you want to understand, a clearing house is like a middleman between the buyer and the seller, and he makes sure that their transaction goes through and there is no problem just because that one person has not fulfilled the obligation. So, in this case, when you have to do clearinghouse functions, you ideally have a clearinghouse acting as a buyer for every seller and a seller for every buyer. So, when I go to the stock market and I want to sell a share, I will never know who is that person who's going to buy that share. Now, that sort of ambiguity can be reduced to a very large extent based on what the recent technology is. And you can use various methods so that even if, like, so I am selling, the clearing house will buy, and then there is person X who's interested in buying these shares, the clearing house will sell. So it will act as a counterparty for both of us. Even if one person defaults, the clearinghouse makes sure the other part of the transaction is carried out. So now let's go forward and discuss each one of these components in detail. Now, when we talk about financial assets, they are basically the instruments, and any type of instrument can be included in this. So, when you do a deposit in the bank, it is an example of a financial asset. When you buy a share, it is an example of financial asset. When you buy an insurance policy or a mutual fund unit, they are all examples of financial assets. Even when you talk about a loan, which is how the investors get money, or an overdraft facility, like the one that you provide at the bank, they are all the examples of financial instruments. Now, obviously, FD or a fixed deposit receipt is a financial instrument for the savers, and a loan paper is a financial instrument for the deficit units or people who are borrowing money. So, I hope this is clear that what is financial assets. Next, we talk about who are the regulators first, and then I'm going to go forward for the next one. So we all are aware about the fact that we there is a regulator, there's a Central Bank of India, which is Reserve Bank of India, RBI, the short form, and that is the regulator for the Indian banking sector, right? And all the banks, which is commercial banks, NBFCs, you will have financial institutions in terms of cooperative banks, payment banks, all the different types of banks that are there that come under the supervision of RBI. Also, RBI regulates money market. Now, like I mentioned in the beginning, and I can see a lot of people have joined in, this is just an overview of what we are going to cover in our module A. And these are extensive topics. So if you can see the updated syllabus of principles and practices of banking, which is going to take place with effect from 2023, the Indian financial system is a separate paper. Here it is one of the units and principles and practices of banking. So if you understand this particular paper, it will be very, very helpful, and it's very easy. You just have to be a little more aware with ears and eyes open now when you interact with somebody or you listen to the news or do any other activity. This is going to help you prepare whatever we discuss in the class. So, like I was talking about, so RBI has got various functions apart from just being the regulator of the banking sector and the money market. What are the other functions? So, the first and the most important is monetary control. So, monetary control means that RBI has a control over what is the money supply that is going to be there in India. So, let's move forward. I hope everybody is clear. So, when we talk about RBI, there is a money supply that RBI controls. The RBI acts as a government banker, like where the government avails all the banking facilities through RBI. RBI also talks about as being the lender of last resort, right? Any bank, any institution which is going to face a problem, it can approach RBI and RBI will take care of you. So this is about the RBI. Then we have another regulator, which is Sebi, Securities Exchange Board of India. Now, Securities and Exchange Board of India, as the name suggests, it is regulating the different assets and instruments, which is a part of securities. And it is also the regulator for the stock exchanges, which is an example NSE, BSE, right? The most common examples. Quickly tell me what is the full form of NSE and BSE? I'm sure some of you have heard this before the session, some of you just heard what we were discussing. NSE and BSE, what is the full form? So, yes, absolutely right. So, I can see quick responses from everybody. And I must compliment everybody is up at 6 o'clock in the morning, winter nights, and that attentive. Very appreciative of all of you. So, yes, so these are the stock exchanges. They also come under the regulation of Sebi. Apart from stock exchanges, there are these commodity derivative exchanges as well. When we talk about commodity derivative exchanges, we have new names, right? The new names are Multi Commodity Exchange, which is MCX. There is NCDEX, right? National Commodity Derivatives Exchange. Now, these two names that I just mentioned, MCX and NCDEX, these are the examples for Commodity Derivatives Exchange, though the same is allowed in a limited manner on NSE as well. So, moving forward, SEBI does not only have supervision on the stock exchanges, but also on all the intermediaries like brokers, the investment bankers, the custodians, depositories, all of them. Now, again, when we talk about financial markets, we talk about the role and function of each intermediary in detail.